Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm in the S85 M3 Touring, but this video is not about this car. I'm on my way to check out the M6 DCT project to see how far the guys have come. So we're in the car now at a petrol station, which if you own a V10, you will know its natural habitat. We're filled up a tank of fuel, and I have Dan with me who's been working on the development of the software. And we're going to go for a drive, see how the car's functioning compared to last time, see what challenges have come up, and Dan can also go through a bit about his background and how he's capable of doing what he's doing. Now, he has requested that his face be blurred out for privacy reasons. That's not a problem. We had to do the same thing with Captain Grass Crank last year. So Dan, let's get the car started and see what it's doing.
No problem. Great start.
Typical. Starter motor looks a bit weak.
Well, due to the amount of starting and stopping that's gone on in this project.
So we're currently in D. You're going to pull away.
We're going to pull away in the manual.
Cool.
And as you can see, compared to the last pull away, it's slightly smoother. So the first indication of an imperfect code is the DSC light being satisfied, or being lit up, because it wasn't satisfied with how the shift went down. And then check engine light.
Check engine lights also come on now. So this is the process you're having to go through, basically. You write the code, you drive.
This is what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And then you go back, you see why it's done that, and then you resolve that in the code.
Correct. Yeah. And when the engine is in an error code, it actually runs a different torque map. And so until I was aware of that, it was a very, very spooky, difficult thing to understand. Why was the torque changing so radically? It would change gear perfectly 1 second. 10 seconds later, it wouldn't change gear at all. Yeah. But that's now all put to bed.
Cool. So what I want to have a chat about is that we've had some questions that we came up with, and we also had questions from viewers. So I've got them from Matt here, and I'm going to go through them and have a little chat while we're driving around. So how close do you think we are to an end product?
I have no doubt that an end product of OEM quality is going to appear from this, because there is no mystery now. Previously, when I was developing and learning this, I couldn't speak the language fluently enough to know what the gearbox was asking for. Whereas now, there's no mysteries at all, and it's just a matter of getting the code lined up correctly without any bugs.
Yeah, so I think the way you described it to me was that you're working on 4 different things independently, and now you've stitched them all together.
That's right, yeah. Let's break it down into pulling away in forward gears, reversing, and then upshifting and downshifting. And in each of those parts, I've had it working perfectly. But if it pulls away beautifully, it wasn't downshifting or it wasn't upshifting. And so I decided to focus on those individually to get the understandings. And in the last week, I've been trying to stitch those working parts together. Fantastically so, actually, because the driving improvements are coming by the day. Yeah. I think I've mentioned to you before that I operate on a statistical method, which means I know how many possible combinations there are to operate this, and I'm working through them. And when luck kicks in, it goes even better.
Yeah. So from my perspective, I've known you for a very long time, probably more than 15 years. So I know what you're capable of and why you can do what you do. But do you want to explain to the people a bit about your background and your expertise and why you're capable of doing a project like this?
Yeah, I've had a very eclectic experience of mechanical and electronics. And I would say that's the gift, that I was exposed to building engines, and I was exposed to electronics, mapping and calibration at the start of my career. I feel very comfortable making things work, which are sometimes looked as difficult for other people. But it's only because I have a confidence in the laws of physics that if I repeat what somebody has done before, the result will be repeated.
Yeah.
And that is what's kept me going so far. I mean, 10 months is longer than I thought it was going to take.
Yeah, that was the part of the next question was how many hours have gone into this, but I think we just need to flesh out the why you can do this part.
So I was first offered a bit of mapping when I was 17 years old by some guys on a dyno, and they just came down to where I was building engines and they said, come and have a go at mapping. And I sat down in front of this V8 engine at 12,000 RPM, wide open throttle, and the dyno operator said to me, he said, look, I'm going to give you a number, you're going to look at this screen. If the number on the screen goes bigger, turn the dial up. If the number on the screen goes smaller, turn the dial down. And if the number on the screen matches the target number, don't do anything. And I didn't realise how important that little mapping lesson would be, and that it would come back and help me on this project so many years later. In the time of all the mapping I was doing, I was mapping Motex, Pectels, AEMs, all those kinds of things. And I slowly fell into CAN. And CAN was the thing that joins the car up. So I was given a project where 3 ECUs would not speak to each other. And this was the start of my CAN journey that led me to getting the skills to do this. I created a small device that could chat, the DAN controller, the DANC, yeah, that can speak across 3 networks at once. It's got 20 analog inputs, high side outputs, and is basically able to do anything a very expensive ECU can do. The only problem was it didn't have any software, so I had to write all of my devices in C. Now, it actually worked so well that I sold some of that technology and didn't have to work for a few years.
Yeah.
And
until now,
basked in the glory.
And then I'll tell you the background of how this happened was because I talked about doing this, and I was initially going to do it just with like a Cyvex or something. And Dan messaged me, hadn't heard from him for about 5 years, maybe longer. And he said, Imran, I know you're thinking about doing this project. He goes, I can do this with my CAN bus knowledge. And I was like, okay, then let's give it a go and see what happens. And that's how we're at this stage. So what else needs to be physically modified on the car to make this all work? And is it reversible?
Okay, yeah, so the this vehicle that we're currently driving in at the moment is mechanically, other than the gearbox and the prop shaft, unmodified. It's got the original diff, it's got the original ABS, it's got the original ABS sensors and all that sort of stuff. The only additional thing that I've had to fit is an oil cooler, or we've had to fit is an oil cooler, because the SMG gearbox's cooler was mounted on the gearbox itself.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have found in the recent development of downshifting and full load testing is the little cooler I've fitted at the moment isn't big enough.
okay.
So for hard driving, a slightly larger cooler would need to be fitted. But other than that,
Nothing.
It doesn't
Just
just bolt
plugs
straight
in.
on though, we did something.
on the engine,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean to fit the DCT gearbox onto the S85, there was a 5mm removal of steel around the pilot bearing on the crankshaft.
Yep.
It's not a nice thing to do because nobody likes to grind a crankshaft, but with enough care and caution, it can be done and it doesn't affect anything. It's not affecting anything reliably.
And the reason we know this is I had a few people reach out to me when they found out we were embarking on this project, and they told me that needed to be done because people had done this conversion, using aftermarket ECUs, and that extra 5mm had essentially caused everything to move
You would break
forward,
the gearbox
and
or the engine.
and the engines had broken basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything's out of time, and so we got that information. So I can't remember who it was, but whoever told me that, thank you very much,
Yeah.
because we would have been having the same
And
problem.
then
So that at that part, it doesn't become reversible, then, does it? Unless
you
It
don't have a
does.
space
No,
wheel.
no, it does become reversible because all you're doing is removing excess material that is not used in any way.
Okay.
So on the SMG car, that material had no function at all other than to guide the pilot bearing into its hole.
Right.
So if you were to put the SMG gearbox back onto this, it would function exactly the same with the same amount of bearing. There would be no issue whatsoever.
Okay, that's cool to know.
So it is reversible. The same with the wiring loom aspect. We just removed the SMG's gearbox wiring loom and put in our little custom loom from the DCT gearbox. But if you wish to go back to the SMG, you would just plug it all back in and there you go. So it is 100% reversed.
Okay, and why this method versus a replacement or standalone ECU?
My name's Dan and I am a recovering mapper. I spent 20 years calibrating some of the best, most powerful cars in the world. Race cars, road cars, development cars, EVs, the lot. And I believed as a mapper, and this is the curse of mappers, I believed I could do it better than the manufacturer. Now, truth be told, in 2000s when I worked for Jaguar, I worked alongside the calibration department of the gearbox department, and they had 6 engineers working for 18 months on a single powertrain project. So to produce a good calibration that starts, drives smooth in all conditions, 6 guys in 18 months. What sort of an ego does a mapper have to think they can do better than that? So over the years, when I created the Dan controller, I realised that I didn't need to be mapping anymore. I could utilise the original manufacturer's mapping and keep that OEM quality. And I actually started fitting standalone ECUs to Jaguars with automatic ZF gearboxes. And this was 9 years ago. And so that led me to considering putting a DCT in my gearbox all that time ago. And I did the research, looked into it, and it was completely feasible.
Oh, just to give you some context, Dan has an E60 M5 and he's owned it for many, many years. So when he's talking about putting DCT, he's talking about putting it in his own E60 M5. So
that was about 8 years ago.
He is an owner as well, and he has been for a long time.
So I knew it was feasible. The reason that we're using this CAN device is we are keeping all of the manufacturer's safety functions, 100%. DSC, engine safety, oil level measuring and all that sort of stuff. I've actually mapped some of the DCT equipped S85s and on standalone, yeah, and they do miss the OEM functionality. This is the best way to do it. I'm keeping Getrag's experience in their calibration, and I'm keeping BMW's experience in their calibration, and all I'm doing is translating in between.
Yeah.
So in the last video, people saw me driving around. It was cruising in D, it was cruising in manual. You put your foot down in D, it would kick down. I could go through the gears in manual. And the 2 things I asked you about was, can the pull away be made better? And also, when you have a DCT, when you think about having a DCT, you dream of V10 downshifts and blips.
Yep.
And now we have those as well.
Shall we go and find out?
Yep.
Yeah, let's do that. So currently on the drive we just did here, you can see that the DSC and half check engine light were triggered. These were triggered because those safety systems I was talking about detected an imperfect shift. And the way it works is if the DSC, which is your stability control, cannot guarantee a perfect shift, how can it control the torque to the wheels? So it lets us know. And this is part of the process, is driving the car to get the codes, to then analyse the data, make a change, and then test it again.
Yeah, and we'll show you that data a bit later on in the video. So yeah, let's go for a drive and see what the downshifting and rev match is like. And then the start motor again. So we do have normal V10 S85 issues during the project. The amount of work we had to put in to get this car just running normally was quite intense when we bought the car. It came with check engine lights and errors on it.
So you can see that pull away there is as smooth as you'd need it to be to drive the car normally. And as with people who have SMGs and DCTs, you can see pull away in second is smooth and easy.
While we're getting to the road, we can talk about the gear ratios, because this final drive is shorter, right? So
yes, significantly so, yeah.
I think that just makes it snappier, but it will reduce the top speed down.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen 190 with no load on it, on axle stands or on the dyno, but not on the road, obviously. So in between these shifts, you can hear it's almost like a misfire, but that is actually the DCT now trying to adapt to the torque information I'm giving it to. But you can see the shifts in between are perfectly smooth. And so there was an example of it not being satisfied with how the shift went down. You could even see it on the tacho. It engaged the clutch, the revs went down for a moment, and the DCC said, I can't drive the wheels, so you can't have DSC. Oh, look at this mud.
Not what you need in a rear-wheel drive car in this.
Now you can feel that the shifts have gone ever so slightly SMG, because there is now a new map in the ECU relating to that code.
Okay.
And before figuring that out, that was quite a challenge to understand why it was inconsistently shifting.
Yeah, and there we've got the blips. Oh, lovely. That's going to be so epic through a nice exhaust.
Yeah. I mean, this is totally standard at the moment in this car, so it doesn't give you the noise. But if I maybe roll down the window next to these buildings, see if we can get down to second from here. No, it wouldn't accept the shift into one. So there's a good example of a bug in the code.
Yeah.
So the car will still drive perfectly fine, but just to rectify that, we'll just do a quick ignition off, back on, wait for the starter to engage.
The other question we got asked quite a lot was, once this is all up and running, is it then feasible to put this engine into an E92 M3 and run?
Very much so, yeah.
Because I think that's going to be quite a popular swap.
So again, that's an indication of that it's saying that I'm not satisfied with the torque here.
And why not an 8 HP in this car? Why a DCT?
So when I worked for Jaguar, I actually worked for ZF, and I was one of the first engineers to use a 6 HP, which is going back some, and that's the basis of what we're talking about here. You know, relating to the numbers of gears, 8 HP is a 8 gearbox. But one of the most impressive things I found when I worked on those gearboxes was the burst speed of torque converters. Now, a lot of people have never seen a torque converter expand and explode. I've only seen it enough times that I never want it to happen in my life. And when I used to do drag racing with autos, we had to invest very heavily in the torque converter to make sure it was strapped and strong enough to not blow up. I believe they're only rated to 7,500 RPM. So if you were taking one of those to 8.5, it wouldn't be a pretty thing on the bearings of the crankshaft. Those end bearings will be overloaded massive.
So the issue with 8 HP on this particular engine is the amount of revs it has.
Yeah, that's what I don't think you can live with.
And the only other thing we need to do while we're out and about is see if we can do a red line.
Oh yeah. I'm happy to try that. Right, let's see if we get those downshifts again. Not in that code. So we'll have to go back to the workshop to do a full throttle one. Let's
So we are literally showing you warts and all through the development. It's not.
This is actually my fun. This is what I enjoy.
He goes, looks what's going on, and then changes and adjusts the code, and then tries again. But it's taken many hours to get to this stage.
We'll just reset the code. Okay, you ready?
Yep. So we're good. So 2 red line ones. But yeah, the conditions are a bit greasy and wet around here. So.
Good little blip there. Okay, so now we'll go back to the workshop and analyse what we just saw there.
Yeah.
So we've just got back from the drive with Imran, searching for codes. That's what we want to see at this moment because we're searching for bugs. And we managed to get DSC and half-check engine light. Now the next part of the job is to actually download what was recorded. So I have a Motec logger under here recording 2 CAN bus channels. I'll plug that into my laptop. Open up the software, hit download, and that's downloading the data. Do I want to clear it? Yes. V5. Okay. That will now allow me to open up the file in here. And gives us some data. Here we are driving around. And so for example, these blips here are something I'm not totally satisfied with. So we're going to look at that and see why that blip happened. This is the revs going up when the input shaft didn't, so the clutch was depressed. You can see the gearbox asked for the torque to be dropped, which it did, and then it asked for this pattern here, which it did, and that's how it got control back to it. That's actually pretty satisfactory, but it didn't drop quickly enough there. I'm just going to introduce a different parameter. If my laptop will unfreeze. One of the issues of doing so much number crunching is that it can overwhelm the software. There we go. So properties, add group, channel, code, lock. Okay, so that's added code lock. So that now allows me to find the location of my code where it was. So it's saying I was in location 197, just there. So now we're going to go over across to Visual Studio, find ourselves 197. And yeah, this is part of the code, that's running in. So if you leave me to process this now and make some adjustments, I'll show you what I do after that. Here we have a piece of data from the drive we just did with Imran. I mean, if I zoom out, you'll see how much data there is. But actually, through, let's say, thousands of hours of reading this information, I'm pretty fluent in it, so I can find the points very quickly. And here we have a change from 7th to 6th. The gearbox demanded this blue amount of torque, and this is what we gave it. Now, I then had learned from this, and on the second downshift, I'd adapted and added extra, but it was too much. The same here. So you can see nice downshifts. 1, 2, 3, 4, very peppy, that one. But then on the 5th, it didn't downshift for whatever reason, and that's the investigation of what to do. It actually cut the torque too much. So I'm now going to look at that, make a change, and then we'll go for another drive. So I've now completed the process of modifying the code after analysing what I saw on that drive. We've now compiled a new C firmware, loaded it into this, and we're about to fit it into the car. Just to clarify, this is the replacement unit to the SMG unit that came out of the car. This is all that you'll have. The process of making a change like that is about a 5 to 10 minutes process. I'll have to drive back in, download the data, make a change, compile the software, flash the unit, reset the data logger, and then go for a drive again. And on good days of finding and fixing lots of things, that can be done as many as 40 or 50 times a day. Okay, so that is code modified after checking the data. Let's go and see what happens when we drive it. Bit slippy, I can say. So there's the first missed shift. So basically I'll just complete my little test drive, go back, have a look at why that didn't shift perfectly, make a change, see what happens, see how the downshifts are. Yeah, we're still shifting down good. It didn't like the change that I made, but that's okay, it was only a small one. What we'll do is we'll reset it in a moment and give it another chance. So this is my new usual trick. Pull over to a stop. Just key off. Hope the starts motor engages. And then we go back to square one. Let's get up to the roundabouts and see how the downshifts are. So that's good, that's a consistent into fourth fault. Makes it easier. Ooh, no less. And we're coming to a stop fault. So, very unhappy piece of code on the downshift for that one, but that's the process. Let's now go back. So the technology that's behind this conversion is CAN, and CAN is something that nearly all mechanics know about. A few enthusiasts will have heard about it, but I thought I'd take this opportunity to give my explanation and understanding of what it is. CAN is a communication. It's a way of speaking, a way of exchanging information, a way of talking. Now, the number one fact that people know about CAN is that it's two wires. There are always two wires CAN. There's CAN high and CAN low. It's 50-50 which is which. What I'm going to show you now is how much voltage is on these wires. So if I put the negative onto one and the positive onto the other wire with the CAN on, there's 0.19 volts being displayed. Doesn't mean there is that many volts, that's what's being displayed at the moment. If I take my negative and put it to the chassis of the car, you'll now see that one of them is at 2.61 volts, which is high, and the other one is 2.4. The difference between those two values was the 0.19 that we saw in the first piece. Now, The interesting thing now is if Imran could turn the ignition on, we should see that voltage change. So we just saw it flicker a very small amount from 2.41 to 2.42 when the ignition went on. And if you turn it off, Imran, not sensitive enough to display it, but that tiny little blip of a voltage was a change in the information on the CAN network. Now that's just a quick test of showing you what you can find using a multimeter. The voltages are so low on the CAN, even if I bridge these together, it doesn't damage it. You can hear the car's upset. Separate it away again and the CAN will sort itself out and will function perfectly. So next thing, let's show you visually what CAN looks like. Okay, so with my probe, slide that back up the back of it so I can hopefully touch it. And hopefully that is now resting and making contact. Yes, it is. So we'll just do a little trick here. I'm just going to zoom out. So time. So each of these squares is 100 milliseconds, now it's 200 milliseconds. Now it's 1 second. So this is showing you what my probe is reading, but there is actually a bit of interference on there. It shouldn't be going up to 4 volts, but the laws of physics say that everything's connected, so it will do. And we're now going to zoom back in time. So this is with, this line here is telling us what we saw on the multimeter, 2.5 volts to ground. Now, that is showing that the CAN high wire is going from 2.5 to just over 3 volts. And if I do it to the CAN negative, so all I'm going to do, you can stay on the laptop, all I'm going to do is swap it to the other wire. You'll see that that same signal exists but goes down. Yeah? Good. So that was the visual representation of CAN high and CAN low. I've now put the negative probe on the CAN low and the positive probe on the CAN high, and that will display just the CAN signal as a voltage, which is here. And again, if I zoom in on the time, you'll start to see the messages appearing. There we go. And if I was to freeze it at one of these places, you're almost starting to see a message. And what this is, this part here, this thick bit is the identifier. It starts off by saying, if these two are here and then there's a gap, I'm a message. Afterwards, it's showing you the ID. So whether it's on or off is the ID. And then here is the information. So you can see it's mostly off, and then there's a couple of 1s and 0s there, a couple of 1s and 0s there. I wonder if I can zoom in further. There we go. Do you see them appearing? Can you see these lines coming? There we go. They're the 1s and the 0s, the offs and the ons. And that is how you were to decipher it. So just using this scope, if I spent the time looking at it, I would be able to tell you what the identification is because of whether it's on or off, and then I'll be able to tell you the data that comes afterwards in this. So this is how you would see CAN with an oscilloscope. There's plenty of videos on YouTube that will describe how to actually interpret it. But that's, there you go, you can see from a multimeter to a oscilloscope, that's CAN. Another interesting thing about CAN is it's very robust. You saw that I crossed up the wires earlier, it didn't do any damage. Here's an example, I can put it in completely back to front, and it doesn't damage anything. Nothing works, but it doesn't damage anything. CAN is actually very robust. I've even seen people put 12 volts down it. I'm not going to demonstrate that. So I'm going to put it back to the way it should be. And then if we go to the analyzer screen, here we go. This is some of the data on one of the CAN buses. I'm not saying whether it's chassis side or DCT side, but there's a lot of data and it's all moving around. This is the example of how CAN is just numbers. FF is a number, it's 255. 0 is 0, 0, 1 is 1, they're just numbers. This over here is showing how often it's being sent, and that's how many have been sent. And you know, that goes on and on and on. There's a lot of pages there. From this here, this ID, this first part is the number there, the bit that follows it is the data, and how many bits of data. And hopefully that's an example of what CAN is. Now, the process of doing this project, I literally had to start with a multimeter and find the CAN, confirm the CAN, then use an oscilloscope to confirm which is high, which is low, then applied a canalizer to an M6 standard car to build up a picture of the language, then applied the canalizer to the E92 M3, which allowed me to build up a picture of the language. After that, I could produce logging files that would give me some form of data, and from that point on I could then build the code. And up until a month ago I was developing the code to make this work. That's now complete, this works. All I'm doing now is tuning the values to make it as smooth as OEM and find any bugs I've happened to have left in there. So I hope that helps.
So that's as far as we've come, and it's the 22nd of January. As you can see, there's lots more work to do. We on purpose showed you lots more errors in this video than we did in the last one to explain the process. We are not going to release this until I'm completely happy. Dan's made absolutely amazing progress so far. He just has to line up all of his little ducks in a row so they work flawlessly. And once that's possible, we will then release this as a product. We don't have any idea about pricing or anything yet. We're gonna have to work out how many hours he's put into this and see if we can pay him for those hours retrospectively over the next couple of years with this product. But I'm super excited about it. When it's working absolutely perfectly. Few bugs to sort out, and hopefully he can do that. He's very confident. I'm getting lots of messages from shops, tuning shops all the way around the world asking for this solution. But please bear with us. When it's ready, if it's ready, we will let all of you guys know. But the dream of building an S85 with a DCT is getting closer by the minute. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you liked the video, please remember to smash that like button. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. If you want to join the conversation, please drop a comment below and we'll try our best to respond to you. If you want to watch more of this project, you can do so over here. If you want to watch what YouTube thinks you might like from our other content, you can do so over here.